All right. We're live. All right. Good morning. It is January 3rd, 2023. I will call the Board of Commissioners meeting to order. We will begin with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you. Our first item of business for today is to administer the oath of office to our three new commissioners, as well as our county attorney and sheriff. So, Judge Willis, if you would please come do the honors. We will begin with Tina Diedrich.
How are we doing this? Are we
Right
coming down and doing the whole thing?
Come right down below here.
Okay.
Yep. You can kind of line up over there. That's how we go faster. You can kind of line up over on the side. So.
That I will support the Constitution of the United States.
I will support the Constitution of the United States
And the Constitution of the State of Minnesota.
and the Constitution of the State of Minnesota.
And I will discharge faithfully the duties
And I will discharge faithfully the duties
of the office of Wright County Commissioner
of the office of Wright County Commissioner
in the County of Wright,
in the County of Wright,
State of Minnesota,
State of Minnesota,
to the best of my judgment and ability.
to the best of my judgment and ability.
Next, Jeannie Holland.
Raise your right hand. I, Jeannie Holland,
I, Jean Holland,
do solemnly swear or affirm
do solemnly swear or affirm
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Minnesota,
and the Constitution of the State of Minnesota,
and that I will discharge faithfully
and I will discharge faithfully
the duties of the office of Wright County Commissioner
the duties of the office of Wright County Commissioner
in the County of Wright,
in the County of Wright,
State of Minnesota,
State of Minnesota,
to the best of my judgment and ability.
to the best of my judgment and ability.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Nadine Shane.
I, Nadine Shane,
I, Nadine Shane,
do solemnly swear or affirm,
I do solemnly affirm, solemnly, can I look at it? I solemnly swear and affirm
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Minnesota,
and the Constitution of the State of Minnesota,
and that I will discharge faithfully
I will discharge faithfully in the duties of the office of Wright County Commission in the County of Wright in the State of Minnesota to the best of my judgment and ability.
very good. All right. I, Brian Lutz,
I, Brian Lutz,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Minnesota,
and the Constitution of the State of Minnesota,
and that I will faithfully execute and discharge
and that I will faithfully execute and discharge
the duties of the office of County Attorney
the duties of the office of County Attorney
in the County of Wright,
in the County of Wright,
Minnesota,
Minnesota,
according to law
according to law
and to the best of my ability and understanding.
and to the best of my ability and understanding.
Sean Derringer,
I, Sean Derringer,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Minnesota,
and the Constitution of the State of Minnesota,
and that I will faithfully execute and discharge
and that I will faithfully execute and discharge
the duties of the office
the
of
duties
Sheriff,
of the office of Sheriff
in the County of Wright, Minnesota,
in the County of Wright, Minnesota,
according to law and the best of my ability and understanding.
according to law to the best of my
Ability.
ability and understanding.
Very good. Thank you.
Welcome to the three new of you, and congratulations again to Mr. Lutz and Mr. Derringer on re-election. So our first item of business is the county board reorganization. At this time, I would ask for a nomination for the board chair for 2023.
Administrator Kelly,
Sir.
I would nominate Commissioner Vetch to be the board chair for 2023.
All right, motion made by Commissioner Ketchmark. Is there a second on that motion?
I'll second that.
A second by Jeannie Holland. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion passes. With that, I will hand over the meeting to Chair Mr. Vetch.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. So moving on to our organizational here, we'll be entertaining a motion for a vice chair. Do I have any motions for a vice chair?
Commissioner, or Mr. Chair, I would like to nominate Commissioner Ketchmark.
All right, we have a motion for Commissioner Ketchmark. Do I have a second or any other nominations?
I'll make that a second.
All right, we have a second. Is there any other nominations? Any other nominations? Any other nominations? Hearing none, nominations are closed. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Commissioner Ketchmark, you will be vice chair. Very good.
Thank you.
Now we have some housekeeping items. I will entertain a motion to transfer back any unused funds of the county attorney's contingency fund, sheriff's contingency fund, and incidental funds to the general revenue fund. Okay, motion?
I'll go ahead and make that motion.
All right, we have a motion by Commissioner Shane.
I'll second.
All right, we have a second by Commissioner Ketchmark. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Now we also have another housekeeping item to recall the unused clerk hire and unused budget for 2022. Do I have a motion?
I'll make that motion, Mr. Chair.
All right, we have a motion by Commissioner Ketchmark.
I'll second it.
All right, second by Commissioner Holland. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. All right. Now we're looking onto the 2023 County Board sessions as listed below in the location. So the first board meeting is the first and third Tuesdays of the month, and the meetings shall be held in this room at 9 a.m. Workshops will be on the second Tuesday of each month at 9 a.m. in this room or subsequent rooms based on notification. All right, I would entertain a motion for that.
I would like to make that motion, Mr. Chair.
All right, we have a motion by Member Dietrich, Commissioner Dietrich. Any second?
I'll second that.
Second by Commissioner Shane. Any further discussion?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I'll just ask the board, because it comes up each year, the possibility of having a evening meeting for county board. So I'll just ask for feedback if there's any interest in that from the other board members, because I hear it yearly from constituents, so I always bring it up. But we have to be in agreement to change it.
Discussion. Is there any discussion on the matter?
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I'd like to say I think that opportunity to have that in the future, something that we could, if needed, if there's a topic that is pressing, or maybe a lot of people that would like to attend, it's would be something to consider, and then just give notice if it was going to be an evening meeting.
So Commissioner Ketchmark and Commissioner Dietrich, I appreciate the conversation on that. I do believe that there is future conversations that can be had on the matter. I do know that when we've had discussions about this in prior times, that when we would discuss evening meetings, a lot of times it would run into conflict with committee assignments, as well as it would run into conflict with city council meetings and township meetings, as well as most of them are held on Monday and Tuesday evenings, and a lot of our committee assignments are Wednesday and Thursday evenings. It was getting complicated to find an evening time that would actually work harmonious amongst the five of us as well. But we can certainly have those conversations as the year progresses.
Mr. Chair, just a question on the procedure with that. If, as Commissioner Diedrich said, there was a hot topic that we wanted to throw that out there, if we set the rest of the meetings for, as we do them now, Tuesdays at 9, if we did give proper notice, can we change one board meeting occasionally because of the topic? Just given like 72 hours notice? Or?
I would recommend that we'd hold a special meeting if there was a hot topic. I wouldn't say that we would want to alter our regular scheduled meeting time or location. Our regular scheduled meeting time and locations would be still held, but if there was a topic of interest that would need to be held in an evening, that we would hold a special meeting for that topic specifically.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. If there's no other discussion, we have a motion, we have a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. All right, meeting times and location are set. Now moving forward to the committee assignments. As everybody, we kind of got a copy there. We had a discussion a week or two prior to educate everyone on the committee assignments. And at this time, we would entertain a motion to adopt the committee assignments as presented unless there was any modifications that would like to be made at this time.
I'll make the motion to adopt the assignments.
All right, we have a motion by Commissioner Holland,
I'll second that.
second by Commissioner Dietrich. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right. Now we're moving on to the regular agenda. So with the board reorganization, so item number 4 on the regular agenda, we were going to approve the minutes from December 27th. I will note that I understand that you, 3 of you were not active participants in that meeting, but I do know that some of you were actually in the room to recognize the meeting itself, so we'll hope that you will participate in approving these minutes. But with that, I'll entertain a motion. Is there any corrections?
Well, Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
All right, we have a motion by Commissioner Catchmark. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
All right, second by Commissioner Shane. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right, minutes are approved from December 27th unanimously. Moving on to the regular agenda, or to approve the agenda today. Is there any additions or corrections to today's agenda? Administrator Kelly?
I have nothing to add, sir.
All right, fellow commissioners? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make that motion.
All right, motion by Commissioner Catchmark,
Second.
second by Commissioner Shane. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right. So moving on to the consent agenda today. Is there any thing that anyone would like to remove from today's consent agenda?
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Letter D, number 1, the contract for Tony Kothlow for discussion, please.
All right, D1. Is there anything else?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda with item D1 removed for discussion.
All right, we have a motion by Commissioner Catchmark,
I'll second.
second by Commissioner Dietrich. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right. Moving on to the consent item pulled, item D, information technology, the approval of Tony Kothlow for the Phase 2 ERP implementation. Commissioner Catchmark.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, in looking at the contract, it's 1 page for $249,000, and I know we've had him hired, I believe it was all of 22, I don't know about of 2021, but I'm just wondering about the accountability for the work and someone that's working off-site primarily. Occasionally, I guess he comes out here if requested, but I'm looking for how that is tracked and what we expect for the work in 2023. And in talking to some staff, it seems like there would be some benefit to this person working full-time in our building, since the contract says that they're gonna be working up to 2,080 hours on this project. And also keeping in mind that a couple weeks ago, we approved a contract for Sierra Cedar for 14, a mixture of full-time and part-time consultants at a cost of $2.5 million. But this contract is set apart from that. So I wanted some discussion instead of just running it through on the consent agenda, and find out what we expect and the possibility of the person working full-time at our building. So there'd be more in-person contact with our staff to maybe shorten up the time frame to get phase 2 finished.
So, Commissioner Catchmark, to your point there, staff did robust the contract a little bit more, not exclusively requiring him to be in person, but pointing it to make it more inclusive or requiring more in-person touch points. However, I guess I don't know if I don't know that there was discussion about the exclusivity of having to be in person. I think that would be a substantial change of the contract. Administrator Kelly, I'll let you talk a little bit more.
Yes, I can speak to that. As you mentioned, we did do work with Tony on phase 1. I did have an opportunity quickly this morning to look back. Our initial contract with him was signed in January 3rd of last year, so exactly a year ago, was on the project for phase 1. So discussions taking place about phase 2 and kicking off. One of the expectations that had been made for phase 2 was for more on-site time, a minimum of 1 day a week, expecting that that would be ramped up more as we get into more of the details and certain phases of the project, and that schedule is being worked on right now. Did not have any discussion with him about being here full-time, but could broach that topic if the board so desires.
Mr. Chair. And like I talked to Administrator Kelly, there isn't any mention of any expectation in the one-page contract that I see that talks about coming here in person. So that's a verbal agreement or gentleman's agreement that we know works when everybody gets along and things are going well. I'd be looking at a 6-month contract like we did the first part of 22, with that person coming here full-time and then evaluated again at the end of that contract.
Commissioner Catchmark, you're requesting that the individual be here they would be here the 1,040 hours in person. Is that what you're stating?
Yes. And we flex our schedules with a lot of our staff, and if there was a need for him to flex it, I believe we could work with that also.
I guess without having Tony here to talk about the contract, I don't know that necessarily he would honor the contract under those stipulations. Administrator Kelly?
Yes, I would be concerned. We should have the discussion and probably modify the contract. What I'm hearing is the desire to have 100% on-site time, first off. Secondly, to reduce that to a 6-month contract. I feel that that's some relatively substantial from what is proposed for today. We had brought forward the 1 year to align with phase 2, which is planned for a go-live of 1/1/24. We certainly could go shorter if that's the desire of the board, but I anticipate a high probability we'll be back in front of you in 6 months.
Mr. Chair, may I add, just questions. As a whole, it would be nice to have a timeline of how ERP has been implemented, when it started, kind of the timeline, how it's gone, and kind of an assessment of the project itself as a whole. Between Administrator Kelly and the steering committee, it would be good to actually have an assessment stating, okay, this is what went well, let's build on it. What didn't go well, we're going to fix that. And then as a whole, the timeline and the expectations and feedback that we might get from the steering committee.
So, Commissioner Dietrich, I guess I can give a short little synopsis timeline, but we can have a discussion if there's interest in doing at a upcoming workshop, whether it's next week or in February, having a little bit more of a robust discussion on that timeline and how we got to where we are. But kind of the history of this is this project kind of started discussion back in around 2018, and there was a discussion about the software issues, and as our IFS, the current, old financial system that was used, and how there was a large amount of duplication, and how there was a lot of documentation that was not shared to the level that it could be shared or should be shared to get robust information. So with that discussion, we went into discussions with Infotech, a company that we had contracted, and they kind of led us down the path that we should consider an ERP system. So that kind of morphed into 2019, where we started actually scoping it in 2019. As you realize, in 2019, the pandemic kind of set in, and that dogged us out a substantial period of time. But then also with that, we went through the bidding process. We had looked at 3 different vendors: Oracle, Lee, let me think here, Tyler.
Tyler was one. SAP was in a player at one point.
Yep.
Microsoft Dynamics. Initially there were, I recall, 7. We narrowed it down to 3 and vetted those based on our criteria.
And Oracle was largely chosen because of the fact that it was used by a lot of our sister counties. There was people that we were able to have discussions with, and they were comfortable with it. That led us to the discussion of deciding an implementer. So Oracle is the designer itself, but you need an implementer to customize it for your uses at your county. Our first original implementer was Cyber. Cyber had ran into some complications with the labor market post-COVID and had a large amount of turnover, in which case we ended up having a variety of different implementers almost on a month-to-month basis, which kind of put us into, dogged us out even further, and at which point we separated our relationship with them on an amicable level. And then at that point, we went out to find a new implementer, which dogged us out even further. And we kind of look at this as like a separation. When we talk about our timeline, where we're at is on time and on budget, is kind of post all of that. So we're looking at the timeline now as to our timeline when we contracted with Sierra Cedar and when we began this process. And we had better numbers, because the numbers and the information we had before were not correct. The process got messy because of COVID, so it was kind of a reset. So going forward, now we're kind of looking at our contract with Sierra Cedar, who is our implementer, who's customizing the software, and Tony, who is the individual who is actually our project manager in terms of connecting the dots between us and the implementer and Oracle. And that's where the contract that we approved last month was the contract with Sierra Cedar, who is going to do the customizing of the software. And then right now we're looking at hiring Tony to do the project management to help us get us through the finish line on this phase 2 of the ERP.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Is there anything to add to that, Administrator Kelly?
I think you gave a great overview. There's definitely a lot of history there. I think you did hit the high points. Again, planning phase 2 would be a go live in 1/1 of 24. This would be the human capital management portions, payroll, the personnel information, benefits, as well as some financial budgeting and costing pieces in there as well that we would use for upcoming budget sessions. So
Now, Commissioner Catchmark, to your request, I would have a little bit of a concern on diluting that contract down to 6 months, or even diluting it into exclusive in person, because I have a high expectation that that's going to inflate that costs exponentially, and I don't know that there's going to be that much added value. I think having an expectation of him being here in writing maybe a day a week or once every other week may be a fair expectation, but if you go to an exclusive in-person contract, that $249,000 contract is going to balloon exponentially. And now I also understand that I would be concerned that if we make it a 6-month contract, the next 6-month contract is going to be through the roof high, because he's going to know that he holds all the keys to getting us to the finish line, and he could charge us through the nose, and we would be very challenged to find somebody else to pick up that contract and take us past the finish line. So I would caution you to doing a broken contract. I would encourage you to do the full contract to get us from start to finish, and doing it remotely, you're going to dog us out another 2 weeks, because we have a workshop next week, and you're probably going to see that price tag go up.
Mr. Chair, just real quick, the idea that I guess I'm asking is make sure we learned from phase 1 and apply it. And it sounds like we were in a much better place with the new person as the project manager and the Sierra Cedar. That for me is just as long as, and that expectation was the feedback from the steering committee to have him on site during like a go live process or different times that it would be more appropriate to have someone here on site for those kind of bigger situations.
And I would defer to Finance Director Lindsay Meyer to talk about that specifically. I couldn't articulate that.
Good morning, Chair, Board. Yes, we have discussed that it would be beneficial for staff to have access to Tony, our project manager, during that time frame, just to expedite the conversations, get people together more quickly, and be able to deal with things as we're moving into our go live. Yes.
Perfect. Thank you.
And if I may also comment on your request for full-time in person for Tony to be here during, the 6 months timeline. I do have two concerns. One, I echo Derek's concerns about it being a 6 month. We're going to need him the full 12 months in order to get this thing implemented. And I have concerns about if we were to switch mid-implementation, we're going to experience some challenges in just the changeover. We've experienced that before in phase 1 when we changed over our project manager.
I don't believe we could switch over midstream, and I would be really concerned of what his contract would look like.
It'd be very challenging. And the other point I would just like to make is that a lot of our conversations with Sierra Cedar are via Teams. So if he's physically here or virtually here, he's going to have the same interaction with Sierra Cedar either way. Yes, he would have an opportunity to meet with Heather and her team face to face on a daily basis, but I'm not certain that that's necessary. Occasionally, face-to-face, we would benefit from.
I think when it goes to the implementation, or the testing, when we go live, I think having an expectation in the contract, if there's a way we want to robust that there's some level of expectation or requirement that he's in person, I think that would probably be worth putting into the contract, and I think he'd probably would be amicable to that as well.
Yes, I do believe he would be.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we table this for the next workshop, because at the very least, it sounds like we agree on some of the wording needs to be changed, which we can't change until we hear the other side of it, which is Tony, the person with the contract. And I'd also like to hear from any other staff that would be affected or would benefit from the in-person. Lindsay can speak to the finance, but maybe she can talk to the rest of her team in the meantime and see what is the benefit to this. And I'd also like to know what is the accountability, because we have a work from home policy, but how do we know what we're getting for $249,000? What kind of a work order is submitted weekly that says this week we did this week we did that? We have our top paid people, $170,000, they're coming to work most every day, and someone making $249,000, there's nothing in the contract that says they have to be here at all.
So Commissioner Catchmark, so contractors are different than that of a for record employee. A contractor is assigned to do a task from point A to point B, and within that task, there is a variety of different scopes of things that they do. Whether they do it in 2 hours or they do it in 2,080 hours, that is not our judgment. It's that they put a price tag for what it's going to take them to accomplish that task. That may take him 6,000 hours. It might take him 2 hours. And that is kind of at their discretion. We're not here to micromanage their time as an employee, or nor do we have the right to do that.
Morning, Chairman, Commissioners. Tony does hold morning meetings every morning, so we know kind of what we're supposed to work on, and we go over any problems that we didn't fix over the afternoon and the night. So he has been available on weekends when we're live. Maybe not here, but he was working at 10 o'clock at night too, just like us. So.
Mr. Chair, is it true you also have a project management module that you can go into and see the workflow? Is that something I read in the agenda?
Yeah, we do. We have Sierra Cedar has a site, and then now when we're live, Remedy has a site with when we have our tickets, and we go over our tickets each morning, and then we go over our emails and our help desk. So he is, putting that all together.
Okay, and that's been helpful.
That's been helpful.
Good.
Yes.
Okay, so Attorney Kreiser, I wanted just a quick question from a contractual perspective, because I don't want this to get dogged out, but I understand Commissioner Ketchmark's concern, and I validate that, as well as Commissioner Dietrich's, in wanting there to be in the go live portion some sort of a requirement for in-persons to it. Wondering how this would look if we could get approved with some of that stipulation, but without actually being articulated in the contract, or we would be better off holding out 2 weeks for a contract with the discussion with Tony himself on that.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, you kind of present me with a difficult contractual legal question here. What you have before you is what's been negotiated by the parties. Any change to that technically is a new offer. So if you're looking to insert language into this, it's got to go back to the other party and they have to agree to it. You could agree to what you have before you now and offer an amendment, because I'm assuming finance wants to get this person working here rather soon and not dog this out for another 2 to 3 weeks. So what you have before you could be approved today. If you want to change it, anything written, we could make an offer. He could reject it, at which point in time we're back here in 2 weeks negotiating again.
Chairman Vetch, just as a new board member, I think there'd be some value into maybe do we have a workshop next week? It's a large amount of money, and it would be nice to kind of give us some clarity as to what's in this contract, how you came up with this contract, how it's benefiting us. Because right now I don't feel comfortable to authorize this because I'm just so new.
And so, to Commissioner Holland, your point, if we wait 2 more weeks, it's not the end of the world. We've waited this long. We've waited multiple years on this project. If it makes the board members feel comfortable with it, I'll support taking next Tuesday and putting on the workshop a discussion on ERP and where we're at and how we got to where we are, and then bringing back, and maybe between now and then, we can have a discussion at the workshop on what that contract should look like with Tony. I do know that finance is supportive of Tony's work, and he's done a good job thus far. I think the board's intentions will be to want to go forward with Tony. I don't want to speak for you, everyone, but I don't want him to feel like, if he's watching here, that this is a criticism on himself. This is just more the fact that we have a large number of new members that don't quite have the history on this project itself, so.
Just one more thing, commissioners. He is actually working right now, so I don't know what our expectation is going to be, as we still have open issues, and he's actively working even this morning, today. I don't know what direction you'd like to go with that. Or Attorney Kreiser, if he has any legal.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, that's the difficult position we're in. I'm assuming he's doing work, and now he's going to be doing work outside of a contract.
All right, prorate the contract for 2 weeks of the 200.
I'd be very nervous about stalling us out for 2 weeks on closing out our phase 1. And further, as far as dictating that he shall be here during, our testing phase and our go live phase, I would encourage you to allow either myself and Lee to work through this and figure out what we actually need. Maybe he'd be willing to do 3 days a week during that time frame, but I'd hate to say he has to be here all 5 days if things are going on and we're not able to even meet with him all 5 days. And I'd like the ability to use our good judgment.
And Finance Director Meyer. So this phase is far less complex than the first phase, in my opinion, and I'm guessing your probably opinion. This side of it being more of the HR aspects of it. There's not nearly as many touch points with the number of employees that there was countywide on the finance piece to it. The finance piece touched almost every employee in the county potentially in some aspects of it. So there was a lot more nuances that had to be put into it from a implementation standpoint. And that's where I feel like I hate for us to dog this out or make this situation much more complicated, but I understand that some of you don't have the history on this as I do, or Lindsay or Heather do as well, because even this stuff predates Commissioner Catchmark as well, a number of it. So
Mr. Chair, I'd be willing to move forward with this contract with further discussion that if we need to add an amendment, just for clarity, once we get your feedback, then we can add that. I think, obviously, we've worked with this person for a year and been successful. Let's not break something that's working, but let's make that clarity and accountability. I think there's a piece of it so that, you know, what if he goes on vacation where we're going to go live? You know, we don't want that to happen, you know. So just maybe that little bit of accountability, but I trust that you guys would be able to negotiate that, bring that to us, either a workshop. If we need to add an amendment to it, the contract, then we can move forward with that. But I would feel comfortable moving forward at this point to keep the ball rolling.
all right, is that a motion?
Yes.
Okay, that's a motion by Commissioner Dietrich. Do I have a second?
Well, Mr. Chair, point of order. I already made a motion.
I need a second
several
first
minutes
before we
ago.
can have any discussion. I need to have a second. Is there a second on that motion?
I'll go ahead and make that second as long as we can agree with the amendment down the way.
All right, so we have a second by Commissioner Shane, now discussion, okay?
Well, I made a motion several minutes ago, and I'd stand by that, and it didn't go anywhere. Basically,
So,
what we've been
I thought it
talking
was a
about.
discussion, was that actual motion
Yep,
before? I'm sorry, I
yes,
didn't understand that was.
I said I'd like to make a motion that we have discuss this further at the workshop for the change in language, which is going to hold up the contract for whatever length of time.
Okay.
And to have the staff give feedback on their need or not to be in person here.
My part in it. So there was a motion for, so that supersedes Commissioner Dietrich and Commissioner Shane's. And we have Commissioner Catchmark's motion to hold out the contract for a workshop and to bring it back forward at a later date with needed amendments. Do I have a second?
Chairman Vetch,
We have to have a second before we get a discussion. I'm sorry. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
All right, we have a second by Commissioner Holland.
Okay, I have a question. Can somebody give me an answer as to what would happen if this gets pushed out 2 weeks?
So the issue that we have right now is that Tony, the project manager, is actually currently working already.
Okay.
And because the way the contract was, the intent was to have this contract executed at a previous meeting, but because we had new board members, there was felt that this contract had substantial meaning, and they held it to this meeting right here. And what would happen is he would be working without a contract, which is, it would be very dangerous for us to have him using potentially county resources uncontracted, if we could even, to that nature.
Okay.
So it would basically stop the work entirely for 2 weeks. And
Until we are approved.
And the contract goes from what date to what date? Is it?
Today through the end of the year, I think?
through
And when did the last contract end?
the 31st of this last year.
So he hasn't worked since the 31st of last year?
This morning, he's
This
on.
morning, he started to work right now.
Yeah.
Under the assumption that
This
this
is
would
gonna
be
be
an approved
approved.
contract.
Okay, I feel as if we're like giving a blank check as a new commissioner, I feel like I'm giving a blank check to just say, yeah, go ahead. I'm not sure why he's been working a couple weeks without a contract.
No, he's
been
working a couple
So
weeks.
he-
He ended up up a couple hours because there was no business being done. So
Okay.
his contract, he basically stopped work on like Friday, the 30th, and he hasn't
Okay.
worked till this morning. He was going to begin, the minute we voted on this, he was going to begin work again.
Okay,
But
He already did start work. We had a meeting at 8 o'clock, 8:30 this morning.
a
okay.
plan of attack, type meeting, yeah.
What we were supposed to, what issues we resolved and what issues are still active.
Okay.
So it's basically then Heather, the ERP and moving forward with any of it basically just stops entirely for 2 weeks. Not to say that that's the end of the world, but it's also, I guess, if it's going to come to the same contract, that would be, I feel, financially detrimental to us in trying to get this done before the end of the year.
Mr. Chair, I guess this isn't, the one that makes or breaks the deal, because we still have 14 people that we approved to be working on this. That's something to consider. That 14 have a contract, one may not. I'm a little concerned when I hear finance say, well, if we don't have time to meet with him that day, then he'd be here sitting here doing nothing. And when I read under contractor duties, what the project manager will do, they'll coordinate and appropriate internal and external resources. If we're not meeting with them or doing anything with them, I wonder then what is he doing someplace else is to help these things.
So there's the conversations that Tony's having between the county staff and him, and there's conversations between him and Sierra Cedar, and there's conversations between him, Oracle, and Sierra Cedar. There's multiple chains of people that are involved at this, and there's conversations that may be happening with, as we go into the HR with Sean, the HR director. There's more than just the finance people. There's conversations with administration, and there's conversations with the attorney's office and getting legal clarification on things and making sure that things are signed off. And so there's a lot of touch points with a lot of different offices within the county or even different vendors outside of this. He is that hub that's pulling all these conversations together. So it's not someone like Lindsay you're not an ERP project manager. You don't have that expertise or that background.
Sure
so
don't.
You wouldn't want to be trying to learn how to do that and also try to be finance director as well.
Yeah. I had no intentions of suggesting that he wasn't working. There is plenty of activities and tasks that he needs to take care of and manage that aren't necessarily going to be talking with Heather and her team or Sean and his team.
Because a lot of what his time is being done is actually creating work orders and saying, okay, Sierra Cedar has accomplished this module, and now we need this information from Lindsay, and now I need this information from Sean. I need it by this date so that we can put it into this module. So he's trying to move the project along and making sure and holding everybody accountable and telling what each person needs to do and when they need to do it. And then he's making sure that it's all done robustly and it has all the I's dotted and T's crossed so we can keep the project getting completed by the end of the year.
And Chairman Vetch, we think the project will be done next year. So this is just a one-year contract.
This is a one-year contract. Correct. Yep.
And then we're done with it.
We're done, yep. Because we wouldn't want to hire on, there wouldn't be any need for that position. Once the ERP is implemented, having somebody to project management implementation when something's already implemented wouldn't be needed. That's the reason you wouldn't want to hire that as an internal employee, because what would you do with them post-implementation? Nothing. So there may be conversations down the road that there may be something else, but we'll deal with that when that day comes. There may be somebody that needs to be there from a maintenance and updating perspective, but there may not be. There might be the robustness in IT or finance to do that internally, but we're going to wait till we get to that point and evaluate then. So that's where we use a contractor, and contractors have a much more specialized knowledge and scope, so they can do it much more efficiently than if we hired an internal staff person, and we don't even have any internal staff to do such work, so.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, if I could, just for your discussion here today, this is an agreement with a contractor, which gives us the ability to cancel this at any point in time. Okay. So if something happens with finance or the board wants to change direction in 2 weeks, we can just cancel the contract in 2 weeks, and it's done.
So one last kind of caution to this is there's a lot of money that's being lost in our $2 million plus contract with Sierra Cedar by holding us out for 2 weeks. That basically is just lost money and time with our contract with Sierra Cedar, as nothing would be happening for 2 weeks. And when you quantify that $2+ million contract over the next 12 months, we want to get that. It could potentially cost us more money in the long run.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to see that source of data to support those figures for one thing, but if we're going to make a change to the contract, it seems like now is the best time at the beginning of the year, and we can't help it that the board changed the way it did and the time frame doesn't line up ideally with the past board to the new board, but this seems like the time to, at the very least, add in the language, but include Tony when we have the discussion about more on-site time, whether it's now or later in the year. It just seems be best to do it now. This is what we had to work with for a time frame. We couldn't help that, and Tony should understand that.
And Commissioners, Tony said he would be available, and he just didn't receive proper notification today, or he would have been here.
So, all right, we have a motion, we have a second on the floor here. Is there any further discussion on the matter? If there's no further discussion on the matter, the motion was to push this out for 2 weeks and to reevaluate the contract at the subsequent workshop next week. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Aye.
Motion fails 4-1. Is that correct? Or is it?
Yes.
Yep, 4-1. All right.
Chairman Vetch, could we still have somewhat of a discussion at the workshop next week about this position? Just because if we can amend it, or, look at, I think we all feel like we're kind of behind the 8 ball and we just kind of need some clarification.
I think doing that would be fruitful for everyone here going forward, so we don't have to have these complicated discussions. I would love to get the full board up to date on how we got where we are and going forward, so make this much cleaner for everyone. Would you entertain your previous motion?
Yes.
All right. We have a motion by Commissioner Dietrich to approve the contract and to authorize Finance Director Lindsay Meyer and Administrator Kelly to make non-substantial amendments as necessary to bring the contract to fruition. And do I have a second?
Second.
Yeah, second by Commissioner Shane. Is there any further discussion?
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
A question with that is, when they bring this further information for potential amendment, what is that going to look like if we already decided that we weren't going to make an amendment now before the workshop? What does that process look like?
So, to not make this any messier, because I feel like our project manager probably is feeling like he is under an intense amount of scrutiny here at this time, and unwarranted, because I don't think he's done anything to warrant such scrutiny. He's worked very well on our phase 1, and I want to make sure that goes on the record. Now, in the future, this contract or any contract, as Attorney Kreiser stated, we could terminate him at any time. So if you wanted to make an amendment to it and he didn't like it, you could say, well, that's fine, then we'll terminate it. Now that brings up other issues now that may put us in a situation where we may be paying more money to somebody to pick up the pieces where we're at, maybe not, but that would be the route that it would look like. It would be 2 months, 4 months, 2 weeks, whenever you would choose to, if you get the majority of the board to say, you know what, I want this amendment, and if he doesn't honor this amendment, we're going to terminate the contract, and that's what it would look like.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so we have a motion, we have a second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right, contract is approved. Thank you, Tony, for your great work. Look forward to working with you here over the next year. All right, moving on to the timed agenda items. Administrator Kelly, the approval of the Flaherty and Hood proposal for 2023 legislative services. Would you like to start that off?
Yes, I can start it out, board. This was an item that was discussed at a prior meeting and was asked to be laid over for further discussion. I've included in the packet the information from last week. Additionally, Shane is here from Flaherty and Hood for any questions you may have, both for past services or future initiatives that we working with the county. So we've been engaged with them for a number of years. The terms of the contract, $55,000 is a not to exceed. Same as in, I believe, at least the past 2 years for a dollar figure. We have not exceeded that amount or come up to it on all times or all years. So that is as an as-needed case. So with that, I guess I'd open the floor if you are willing to, Shane, for any discussion or questions you may have.
Sure. Mr. Chair, I can just stand for questions or make a couple remarks if you'd like, either way.
Sure, if you just, I guess you want to make a couple of remarks first, and then we'll see if the board members have any comment.
Yeah, Mr. Chair and board members, I may as well at least introduce myself and the firm a little bit before discussion. And let me say, too, congratulations to the folks who's joining the board today, to our county attorney and sheriff who were sworn in today as well. And as I think you all are aware, it's also the first day of the legislative session. So there's a nearly unprecedented number of new legislators waiting to do the same thing, and many of their families will be at the Capitol for their swearing in here at noon, and then we're off to the races with the 2023 legislative session. So, but to kind of back up and introduce myself and the firm, again, my name is Shane Zart. I'm with the firm Flaherty and Hood. We're located in St. Paul, right across from the Capitol, but our focus and our firm has been around. I think we're celebrating probably our 30-year anniversary. I think 1992 the firm was founded by Tim Flaherty was our founder. But for that entire time, our primary focus has been representing local governments at the Capitol and primarily local governments in greater Minnesota. So we've worked on a number of issues from taxes, economic development, bonding, transportation, the whole range. As Administrator Kelly mentioned, we've worked also with Wright County for a few years now. One of the reasons, to give you some full history, that frankly we came into a relationship with the county was because there were some issues bouncing around at the Capitol, and I think Commissioner Vetch was one of them at the time, but a couple of the board commissioners caught wind of some things and said, well, wait a minute, there's some discussions here where we feel like Wright County is being left out, or that they might implicate our county's interests or impact our taxpayers. And we either weren't aware of them or didn't have a voice in them, or by the time we came aware of them, it was too late. And some of those, at least initially, were related to the Monticello nuclear plant and the unique way in which power plants, railroads, and pipelines are, as some of you know, it's assessed and valued and taxed like nothing else in the state. Very different from residential property and all that. There were some proposals back in 2017-18 to change the way, modify the way that those were assessed, and some provisions in there to say if a county or city sees a tax base hit because of those legislative or administrative changes, well, there's going to be some at least aid there if there's a threshold of loss that you see just because of that rule change. Well, I think Commissioner Vetch, you might remember that was one of the first things where he threw up a red flag and said, wait a minute, we're looking at this threshold and we are either right at it or right below it. And when they came aware of it, they said, well, we need to be involved in these discussions sooner. And our firm had some expertise in that area. And that's how we first came to be working with the county. Those issues have carried on, frankly. And we may have a busy session on some of those this year as well. There's anytime a significant portion of your tax base is made up by state assessed property, a power plant, a pipeline, there's any little fluctuation in it can cause shifts onto other taxpayers and businesses in a city or county. So that's one thing that we're actively keeping an eye on for. But in addition to that, we've worked on a number of other issues for the county in the last few years, including the bonding, seeking a bonding appropriation for the dental clinic, and a range of other things. Most recently, I think driver and vehicle services has been a big focus. As some of you know, because I'm sure you heard about it from your constituents too. I know some of you had elected roles prior to joining the board, or various community service roles even. And during the pandemic, DVS shut down all 93 of its testing stations and then only reopened 14 of them. And that didn't serve anyone well, but looking at the distribution of where those were reopened to, it wasn't equitable at all. And at the same time, Wright County, we're saying we're the 10th largest county in the state now, one of the top 5 fastest growing. We needed more service than we were getting before the pandemic. So that's taken a lot of ups and downs and a lot of back and forth with the agency. And last year, as disappointing a session as it was in terms of the number of bills that actually passed and some of the back and forth and stalemate and that. One of the things that was actually included in the transportation bill that never passed was a provision that would have required locating a DVS testing station in Wright County. So there would be no question, they have to locate one here. And that was an effort that we collaborated on and made sure was in there. But more recently, I think a lot of that noise that we've made and a lot of the Wright County's legislative delegation has been able to put pressure on the administration. We've gotten mostly good news lately on the DVS front, and now we understand they're building out a facility with the intention of opening and expanding service here in Buffalo. So, excuse me. that's an issue that's taken up a great deal of our time in the last couple of years. And I'll just tick through a couple others because I feel like I've talked too long already and you've had a long discussion already today. But a couple others that I know have been a focus of the county's homestead credit. Now, this is one where I think the county, Wright County, will give you guys a lot of credit, because one of the things that I think this board has focused on in the past, and Commissioner Vetch, I know continues to be a focus of yours, is some of those issues that may not even be county programs, things that the county controls, but they're things that they're state programs, but the county can have a voice in that impact your constituents, not county government directly. And the homestead credit is one of those where, rapidly rising home values have kind of put the state homestead tax credit in a position where a lot of people just aren't seeing the relief from that they should. Now, last year, Senator Ann Rust had a bill that would have increased some thresholds, made it better for a lot of homeowners. I think with one of the things we worked with on the county was some analysis on that proposal. We kind of came up to the conclusion of saying, well, that's good, but it's not enough. Well, now with a change in majority, Senator Ann Rust will be tax chair. And so we expect that conversation will return. So one of our intentions is to work with her, see if we can say, let's bring that back, but take it a little further and give folks more relief. But a couple other things, and Commissioner Vetch participated in a Energy Transition Advisory Committee that was assembled by DEED and the state. This is kind of a look at the closure, either in the short term of coal facilities like the Sherco plant, in the long term, the future of facilities like the Monticello plant and the Prairie Island plant, the 2 nuclear facilities in the state, and kind of what is the future for those workers, for the tax base, for the folks who will be directly impacted by retirements of facilities, conversion of facilities, continued operation of facilities. That was an effort that I participated in directly. I know Commissioner Vetch did directly, and it's coming up with a lot of recommendations being released here soon, and a lot of those recommendations heading to the legislature in terms of how do we make things better for communities that, again, those ongoing fluctuations, but then across the border, our friends in Sherburne County sooner, of course, with the Sherco facility. How do you account for some of the losses that they'll see with the retirement of that facility? A couple other things. I know Greg would probably be angry if I didn't mention ditch drainage, because we worked on a couple of those issues. And all I'll say there is that there's been in the past couple sessions, 2020 in particular. I remember Representative Marion O'Neill had a bill that she introduced at the urging of the county, and that she dropped it in the hopper. And the day that it actually got introduced, got a bill number, though, I think was March 16th, the day that the legislature shut down entirely and went home for a month because they were trying to figure out what they're going to do at the beginning of the COVID period. So that's been kind of an ongoing frustration. And this year, again, anytime you have single party control of government, there's a lot, things can move fast. There's a lot you got to keep an eye on. And I think that'll be one that, especially on a monitoring front, could keep us busy in terms of some of the ideas that might come forward there. And then, odds and ends. One of the things I know last year that came up toward the end of session, we'll continue to keep an eye on, was the Corridors of Commerce program. I think that a couple of you, I know I haven't met you all yet, but I know your backgrounds a little bit from your public bios and that. I know involvement in various corridor coalitions and the challenges with the Corridors of Commerce program, whether it be funding or the criteria, project selection. There's been a lot of proposals that have come up in the last 5 years, I would say, but not terribly seriously until last year, how to modify that program. And anytime, again, you tweak those project selection criteria, the things that are good for maybe a 212 or a Highway 23 may not always be the same things that are good to make 94 rise to the top of the list. So that was one thing that we helped the county staff understand at the tail end of last session. Didn't put a ton of energy into, since it was kind of a later rising issue, but we're able to put the county and some folks from the I-94 coalition in direct touch with Representative Paul Torkelson, who was leading up some of those bill discussions in the House, and those kind of stalled out with the rest of the end of session negotiations anyway, but that's kind of a range of issues. So I know I've ticked through a lot. Again, maybe I talked too long, and I apologize for that, but just so you can get a sense of who we are, what some of the issues we've covered for the county in the past are, thought I may as well lay it all on the table while I'm here and stand for any questions.
Shane, thank you so much for the good recap. I appreciate you recapping the history of the production, the shift from the general land valuation of a state assessed property to a potential production tax. So that was the big original conversation, that there was a big move by Excel and people at the state to try and move power plants to a more production-based tax model than the traditional value-based. So, but with that, questions, fellow commissioners?
Honestly, that was great, kind of overview, and it sounds like successful. I mean, you're working on things for the county, for the people of this county. It's unfortunate that we need to have a lobbyist to, get the ins and outs with our legislators, and then also with the bureaucracy down in St. Paul, but it's what it is.
Mm-hmm. Well, and Mr. Chair and Commissioner Diedrich, I think, well, you're right. That's something we've heard a lot, even from former board commissioners who have sat in your seats, or I guess seats down the road before this building was built. But and is one of those realities. I think one of the things I love about my job is that we work primarily with local governments, like I said, and you can work on so many things that really impact people's lives. But one of the things I think that is unfortunate is that so much effort is needed sometimes to even get simple answers to make incremental progress in that. But with that, I mean I'll use your question a little bit as a springboard too. I think one thing that we value is our collaborative relationship with you as the board and with the county staff is really focusing our efforts and making the best of your investment and our time to push on those things that may not get attention or may not go somewhere if not for the efforts of Wright County Board or even sometimes we might step back on an issue because someone else is working on it. If AMC or others have it covered, we don't need to invest more resources there. But if there's no one else working on it, or even if it's number 10 on someone else's list, but it can be number 1 on ours and we can light a fire under it, then that might be something we dive into. But even, I know you had a long discussion about cost and other things on a separate contract. We don't need to get into that again. But I think since Administrator Kelly mentioned it, I will say, especially for the new board members, what we've done since, as long as we've been engaged with the county, is an hourly contract up to a cap. And that's tended to work very well, at least in my opinion. It's kind of naturally scalable and really is at the direction of the county, how much you want us involved in any given issue. And what I think we've seen in recent years, 2020 was a very active year. That was the year we had a bonding request in, drainage legislation was moving, might have even been a little busier. That would have been the year I'd say we might have hit that cap if that drainage stuff had kept going, if it hadn't gotten shut down. But in some years too, we've maybe come in at half of that contract maximum, because that's what the activity at the legislature called for. And that's where I think we've seen the benefit on both sides of having some room there, but also letting the contract be a little naturally scalable under that number to the activity that you guys need.
As well, state level, do you ever help with anything at a federal level? It's just state.
So our, well, Mr. Chair and Commissioner, our involvement is primarily at the state legislature. Mm-hmm. So the answer is yes, but I don't want to overstate it, because we're not a firm that has a presence in DC. So for certain clients where it's been needed, where it's made sense, especially maybe you're trying to package together state and federal funding to make a project go, or help navigate a federal issue, or even help a county or a city navigate some federal requirements in that. We have been very involved in those things, but so I think that's maybe where the line is. So the answer is yes, and where we interact a lot with Minnesota's federal delegation, but we don't have a presence in DC. But I think we have helped a lot on navigating federal issues.
Thank you.
All right. Is there any other questions for Shane?
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Thank you. Thanks for coming in. I think this is a good way for a contract like this to get sorted out. The timing's good. The board all are here. So thanks for coming out and being here in person. You mentioned odds and ends, and you mentioned the dental clinic. Do you think there's anything you can do to assist us in getting the $1.4 million grant for construction that we haven't received yet? And I don't know how much you know about that, but do you think it's within your realm that you could do that if we decided to put you on that case?
Mr. Chair, members of the board, maybe I can help Shane here. The holdup right now is with our title examiner and getting this thing approved through the Torrance process. So if Shane would like to help me lobby the court in getting a new title examiner, maybe we can do that. So, but that truly has been an excruciating 12-month delay.
Is there an expectation when that would be done?
I think he just maybe approved it about a week ago. Maybe. I got to check again with our attorney.
Okay.
But he leaves for 4 months out of the year to go to Florida, and during that time we get no responses. So, and he's appointed by the court. We have no control.
So it might still be back to odds and ends for Shane.
It could fit in there.
Do you want to go to Florida?
Well, commissioners, if that's what it takes, I think I can go to Florida, especially with today's forecast. If that's what you need me to do, I don't have to do that. But no, I think Chair and Commissioner, the answer is yes. If that needs to fit in odds and ends, or if there is a legislative or administrative component to the solution that's needed there, then we've or at least been keeping tabs enough on that process and the status of it to keep ourselves ready to kind of spring to action and help with that if it's a legislative solution. But I know that some of the staff and Commissioner Vetch, primarily, and some of the previous board members are keeping us in the loop, I think, as we needed on that. So we'll continue those discussions and take it from there.
Well, thank you, Shane. Is there anything else,
any more.
Commissioner Ketchmark? No. Well, I appreciate you coming out here. As always, it's been a pleasure working with you. I look forward to working with you more here in the upcoming year, pending a vote here. But with that being said, is there a motion?
I'll make that motion.
All right, we have a motion by Commissioner Dietrich,
I'll second it.
second by Commissioner Holland. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right, motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Moving on to our 9:15, which is actually going to be our 11:10 item. Jacob Wagaman from Planning and Zoning to adopt a resolution in support of the Sherburne County's grant application for EPA fundings for source-separated organic composting operations.
Yes, good morning, Commissioners and Commissioner Vetch. Sherburne County has brought forth wanting support from surrounding counties such as ours, Benton County, Isanti County, to help solidify a bid process between this region is 8 states in this federally funded grant. They want our support to help their grant go forward. What they'll do with their grant is they will sub-award that money for equipment only to single source separating facilities in the region. This gives Wright County a good way to get rid of their organic waste, not putting the burden on the county at this time and not involving us monetarily. In addition, it will put residents with their individual haulers that opportunity for their individual hauler to decide whether they want to continue curbside organic pickup or implement it in cities and municipality townships that don't have it currently. Currently, we only have 2 cities that participate with Buffalo and Rockford. That might go up, especially on the north end, if Sherburne County gets the grant. Is there any questions about their grant? It's pretty standard. I mean, they just want to get money. They want support from us, but we don't have to give them any money or staff time.
So discussion, fellow board members. So we historically, when we find issues that we can support our sister counties on that are of non-competitive nature, we try to do so as much as we possibly can, because what's good for them is good for us. And this one actually does have a direct benefit to us potentially, yes, if they are awarded that grant.
Right.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Question, Jacob, thanks for giving us the info. Would this bring Sherburne any closer to having one of these digesters that would be allowed? When I hear solid waste and recycle, I think about what we were looking at last year.
Sure. I don't think it would be a digester. It would be a single source. It would be more food waste, and it wouldn't be the way that you guys viewed that process. It would be different. It would be more of a compostable facility in a sense, but sorting out food waste and turning that to whatever they want to do with it. I don't know. I can't speak for the private side of it because it's going to go to a private business. But
Okay,
As it pertains to that, I couldn't answer that question
okay,
fully.
thank you.
A lot of what this does is these type of granting opportunities create more capacity in the MSW landfills by removing those organic materials and getting them out of those MSW landfills. And to my knowledge, Sherburne County has a few of those MSW landfills. They have one quite large one. And if they can actually create more capacity and be able to keep that operating longer, I mean, that's a win-win for everyone. And especially if we can actually get good fertilizer soil out of those organic materials. Hence the reason the federal government and state government have been funding grants for such operations.
Mr. Chair, I'll
Yes.
make a motion to adopt a resolution in support of Sherburne County's grant application for EPA funds for a source-operated organics composting operation.
All right, we have a motion by Commissioner Catchmark.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Shane. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Resolution, right?
Oh, it's yeah, thank you. It's resolution, Commissioner Catchmark.
Aye.
Commissioner Shane.
Aye.
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 All right, resolution passes unanimously. Thank you
you
for
so
catching
much.
that. All right, moving on to our 920, which is now our 10 item. Ross Demant, to adopt two separate resolutions related to a grant application through the Transportation Alternatives Program for the Crow River Regional Trail.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Commissioners, so today staff is requesting the board to adopt two separate resolutions. Both would be in support of a grant application through the Transportation Alternative Program for the Phase 2 or Segment B of the Crow River Regional Trail that stretches from Rockford to Hanover. Currently, the county has set aside $550,000 in the capital improvement fund for the county's portion of this project. So this grant would go to offset that. The funding year for the grant would be 2028, so we do have some time. That also allows us to go after additional grant funding, which would help offset that $550,000, which would lessen the amount that the county would be responsible for.
All right. Any discussion, any questions? Yeah, I'll entertain a motion to adopt the two resolutions. Administrator
moved.
Kelly, do we need to do those separately?
It would probably be best to do them separately, yes.
All right. So looking for a motion on the adoption of those resolutions relating to the transportation alternatives.
I'll make that motion.
All right, we have for the first resolution by Commissioner Shane, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Commissioner Catchmark. All right. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Commissioner Shane?
Aye.
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 Resolution passes unanimously. Second resolution in this. Nope, so we need a resolution there for that second for the second resolution for the transportation alternatives.
I'll make that motion.
All right, we have a motion by Commissioner Shane,
I'll second that.
second by Commissioner Holland. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Aye.
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 Resolution passes unanimously. Thank you, Ross.
Thank you, Commissioners.
All right. Oh, our favorite man is here. I haven't got to see him now in a couple months. I figured he had all the drainage issues solved in the county. I guess that's not the truth.
Yep, just
Hey,
vacationing in
wants-
Florida now, so taking my time. So, good morning, Mr. Chair. And I was actually really nervous I was going to mess that up this morning because I'm so used to doing Madam Chair.
Chair,
so,
I know,
and members of the board. My name is Matt Detjen. I'm the Agricultural and Drainage Supervisor. So I work within the Parks and Rec Department. So I do some work with parks and also ditch stuff, which is going to be your favorite items on the agenda, I'm sure. So the first one that we have is to schedule an informational meeting with Victor Township. This would not be a public hearing. This would be an informational hearing or meeting. So there would be Commissioner Catchmark, myself, and whoever was appointed as the other ditch commissioner to meet with Victor Township. And I can answer any questions you have about that. But the suggested meeting date is January 19th at 10 a.m. here at the Wright County Government Center.
January 19th. And I gotta remember, I had to pull up my committee assignment list because it got shaken up so much. Who is, oh, I got this one printed out so small because does everybody remember who was the second person appointed on there?
I think it's me.
I think it
I
was
have a
you.
lot of ditches.
I think he's you, because he was.
too.
So, as long as that works within your schedule, and Commissioner Catchmarks, the rest of us are,
So far, so good.
all right.
Awesome. Look forward to it.
We'll look for a formal motion to adopt that scheduled informational meeting.
Mr. Chair, I'll make that motion.
All right, we have a motion by Commissioner Catchmark,
I'll second it.
second by Commissioner Dietrich. Any further discussion?
Mr. Chair, just for those that weren't involved, this is a lengthy, several-year process to get ditch 10 completed, over $1 million and about 12 miles. It was probably the first big ditch project that we've done and actually got it completed, but this is going to be split amongst two meetings. The Victor Township requested a meeting with staff and the ditch committee to go over their concerns with this project, which is done. And we're just going to see what we can answer as a staff. But if they got questions that pertain to the engineer work, we're going to have that as a wrap-up meeting later, because I didn't want to pay the engineers for two meetings to potentially answer the same questions twice. So we'll go with what we got here with our attorney, drainage coordinator, two commissioners, and what we can't settle there, we'll get addressed at another final wrap-up hearing. And are we talking about that date here today too?
Yep, that's item number 4. Yep.
Okay, well, that's all I had, just some background there.
Or 2, actually. Yep.
All right. Thank you, Commissioner Catchmark. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right. Informational meeting date and time is set. Now we're going to schedule a public hearing for County Ditch 10 in the accepting the contract pursuant to Minnesota Statute 103E.555.
Yep. So as Commissioner Cashmark had said, that project, County Ditch 10, is completed. So this final public hearing is to do the final pay app and to hold a public hearing in case there's essentially any more requests for additional work or anything like that. So it's a very specific part in drainage law why we hold this hearing, because it is over the threshold that requires us to bid the project, which is $175,000. So by law, we are required to have this final kind of wrap up public hearing. So we would need a quorum for this. The date suggested for that is that one January? Hold on.
Looks like 17th. Yep.
Actually, I think sorry, this one would be January 19th. I apologize. That would be the date set for the, sorry, just give me 1 second.
You're looking at Thursday, January 19th, you said?
Yep, I think that was what worked with you, Greg, correct? I'll double check. Yep. So.
And were you thinking like a 10 a.m. kind of deal, or?
Yep, in the morning. Yep.
Mr. Chair, we already have the informational at Victor scheduled for the 19th at 10. Are they reversed or?
Yeah, that's what I was looking at.
Okay.
I apologize for that. It's a little bit of juggling to get dates.
So you want to look at doing it after that meeting, Commissioner Ketchmark?
Well, we should straighten out the 10 a.m. on the 19th. Is that going to be, that's proposed for the final wrap-up for everybody?
Yeah.
That has to be held here?
Yep, that would be the one where the engineering firm would make their presentation, and then after the presentation, we would open up the public hearing for public comment, and then
Okay,
the final
well,
acceptance of the contract.
then I'd have to make a motion for this to be the final wrap-up if that's.
Yep, sorry, I apologize. They got, in the agenda, they got doubled up. The public hearing would be February 15th for County Dish number 10 at any time.
So
we do need
Wednesday.
Yeah, we need to publish for 3 consecutive weeks in the paper to meet public meeting laws.
Okay, February 15th. So I'm guessing you're thinking like a 10 a.m. kind of deal again?
I think if that
I'm
works.
booked at 10, 11 I could do.
11? Okay.
You want to do 11? That's
11
fine.
on the 15th.
Okay, February 15th at 11 a.m. We'll have a drainage committee of the whole for a public hearing for the accepting of the contract for County Ditch 10. And with that, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make that motion.
All right, we have a motion by Commissioner Ketchmark.
Second.
We have a second by Commissioner Dietrich to set the Drainage Committee of the Whole for February 15th at 11 a.m. here in this room. All right, any further
Sorry about that.
discussion? Nope. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right.
Mr. Chair. Back to that 19th, that wrap-up for just Victor, they had requested a later afternoon or an evening time.
Okay.
And I just remembered that. Can we make that like 3 o'clock on the 19th?
Mr. Chair, members of the board, we have a planning commission meeting that night. So I don't know, is it Commissioner Dietrich or Holland?
Holland is on there. Yep.
So
Those two would be free, just a matter of whether you fit in on that. If you do it at 4 o'clock.
I'll make it
we can
work.
Yeah.
Later
Okay.
is better, but we'll make
Later's
it work.
better? Well, 4?
4, what do you? That's fine.
4 o'clock? Okay.
So, first of all, we'll need to formally rescind the previous motion. So Commissioner Ketchmark.
I'll rescind.
All right, he makes a motion to rescind the previous motion. And Commissioner Dietrich seconds that to rescind it. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Now we'll look for a new motion to set the informational meeting with Victor Township for January 19th at 4 p.m.
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Commissioner Ketchmark,
Second.
second by Commissioner Dietrich. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right. We have the informational meeting on January 19th at 4 o'clock. We had a unanimous vote on that, a unanimous vote to set the Drainage Authority public hearing for County Ditch 10 on February 15th at 11 a.m. Now moving on to the third item, accept the Conservation Partnership Legacy Grant for the amount of $79,948 for the Bertram Park Habitat Enhancement Project.
If you have any questions about that project and details or anything like that,
No.
I'd be happy to answer.
Very good information, but I'll be entertaining a motion. Thank you for bringing that forward.
You want to just overview the project real quick?
Yeah. So it's for an area, we call it East Bertram, east of 90th Street in Bertram Park, where we apply for the CPL grant, and that's to do habitat restoration work. So a lot of it would be prairie restorations. There'll also be some shrubs, some bat houses, and some other work, including like buckthorn management that'll take place. This does involve an in-kind match, which can be labor of 10%. So we essentially put that contract out to a contractor. They gave us their costs, and we essentially took part of the contract away from them, and that we're going to be doing in-house to do that 10% match. So there won't be any general fund dollars going to this.
Okay, thank you. I'll make the motion.
All right, we have a motion by Commissioner Dietrich.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Shane. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right. Now we are down to schedule a ditch committee of the whole to discuss drainage projects.
Yeah, so this is the one, and we're hoping to have this before the Victor Township meeting, obviously. Greg and I just thought it was a good idea to sit down with you all and kind of go over current projects and drainage law in general. So I will have a nice big fat 3-ring binder ready that summarizes, it's not gonna be that big, drainage law, but having a 1 hour meeting or something like that, just to go over some of the basics and kind of the ongoing projects that we've been working on for 2, 3, 4 years in some cases. So I wanted to hold that before meeting with Victor, so Tina really is up to speed. So when we discuss that, it would be a little bit easier. So.
Sure.
So January 19th at 10 a.m. would be probably a good time to have it then, since time was previously open, and we can have it prior to their meeting that evening.
Let's do it, and then, does that work?
I'll be here all day.
Okay.
All right, if that works for everyone, I'll entertain a motion to set a drainage committee of the whole for 10 a.m. on January 19th.
Mr. Chair, I'll make that motion.
All right, we have a motion by Commissioner Ketchmark.
I'll second that.
Second by Commissioner Holland. Any further discussion?
I'm just going to say, get me that packet sooner than later so I can study it, okay? Thank you.
I've never heard anyone want any of my drainage stuff, so that's pretty awesome.
I got to get up to speed.
All right. Very good. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. All right. Moving on here, we are down to the Item number E, Tyler Webster in the Finance and Taxpayer Service, the designation of the official county newspaper. This has always been an interesting one over the last couple of years. It used to be something that was linear and you could always expect what it would look like, but
I don't know if I want to hear that, but good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board. My name is Tyler Webster. I'm the elections manager and the office manager for the Finance and Taxpayer Services Department. Here today before you to designate an official newspaper for the county. Essentially, this newspaper will publish all of our official proceedings that are statutorily required to be published in the newspaper. So think like our delinquent tax lists, committee proceedings like our committee minutes, financial statements, as well as other required notices such as our election notices and things of that nature. We'll talk a little bit about the bidding process. We solicited bids from the 8 official or the 8 compliant newspapers within the county. We received 3 bids from 3 newspapers: the Herald Journal based in Howard Lake, the Delano Herald Journal, and the Monticello Times. It was a blind sealed bidding process. We received bids up until the deadline of December 27th at 4:30 p.m. At that time, we unsealed the bids and calculated those results. So the papers, they can submit bids for 1-year contracts or 3-year contracts. So we received bids for both of those circumstances. Previously, we had a 3-year agreement with the Herald Journal. And we'll kind of see here that the rate that we were at for 2019 will be kind of similar to some of the bids that we're going to see for our 3-year bids coming up here. So without any kind of further ado, in consultation with Finance Director Meyer, we reviewed the bids. What we do is we ask them to provide us bids on how much it'll cost per inch to publish notices in their paper. We take that number and then we take the font size and the column lengths and things like that. We calculate how much it's going to cost for us to publish per letter our notices, and we have those calculations for you on page 2 and 3 of the packet. So our determination was, our recommendation will be that we recommend the Delano Herald Journal for a 3-year agreement. They come in at the lowest rate. They have the highest distribution, so we think it would be probably the best option to go with, but you're free to kind of make it your own conclusion on that.
9/10 of a penny.
Yeah.
It was. I think, like I said, this has always kind of been an interesting. This kind of shows you the way media has changed, and legal notices are becoming a larger part of what the newspapers are, not so much the ads anymore or even the stories. They're largely legal notification forms. And hence, because there's no other revenue streams, largely that's being passed on to the government agencies. And we've seen that rate change substantially over the last 6 years.
So I will say the rate that came in, it's going to be the same rate as we had in 2019. It's just going to be potentially a different paper if we go with our recommendation. I would also say that they are still required statutorily to publish all notices online. And so all those notices that we're sending to them, they're going to be published on their website as well as in print, and there's no additional charge for those online publishings.
Thank you, Tyler. Is there any other discussion on this item?
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
I have a question. The Herald Journal and Delano Herald Journal basically come out of the same building, but maybe different doors. How do you have any idea why there's a price difference from what we've had in the Herald Journal now to Delano?
My understanding is that they're sister newspapers. That's how they describe themselves on their websites. I think the Herald Journal, it's more dedicated to the western part of the county, where the Delano Herald Journal does Montrose, Delano, and I want to say Loretto, so it's a bit more east-centric. So they may have coordinated bids, I'm not sure, but if they both are kind of the same holding company, they may have just decided that they'd rather have Delano be the home instead of the Herald Journal.
Well, thank you.
That's just my assumption.
It's informative because I wasn't here for the last process, but it comes up every 3 years, potentially.
All right.
Mr. Chair, I'd make a motion to approve the bid for the Delano Herald Journal to be the official county newspaper for the next 3 years.
All right. We have a motion by Commissioner Ketchmark.
I'll second that.
Second by Commissioner Diedrich. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Items for consideration. Refer to County Board Workshop on January 10th, a week from today, to have, typically what we always have is the first part of the meeting is to discuss subsequent meetings as necessary, the GIS overview, schedule a retreat date in February, as well as I want to give a quick overview of the CMRP, Central Mississippi Regional Planning Partnership for the group, which I'll present, and then we'll have an overview on ERP as well, and where we have been and where we are going. I think with those 5 items, we'll have a pretty robust agenda, but is there anything else that you'd like to discuss, Administrator Kelly?
I think you've covered it. I know we're in process with the sale of the building. I don't know if we need to do a quick update on that item, just for get up to speed as well, but other than that, I think we do have a full agenda now for that date.
Mr. Chair, would we addressing the project manager
That would be
as
part
well,
of the ERP.
of the ERP?
Yep.
You would include that in there. Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you for the good
Mr.
question.
Chair?
Yep.
And as far as the GIS overview, I mentioned Administrator Kelly, but I think it'd be beneficial for the whole board to have a couple of org charts to where what it used to look like with GIS where it was to where it is now, and the grades associated with the management and how many staff are included in the GIS. And then as another item, based on employee feedback and my own observations, I'd like to address the snow removal process here on our campus. We've got a contract for snow removal, and we've got highway department that's used as needed, but I'd like to know where the separation is between parking spots and snow, I guess. We can discuss that.
Okay. So with that, we have a pretty good robust agenda. I'll entertain a motion to adopt these items for the workshop for January 10th.
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Commissioner Catchmark.
I'll second.
Second by Commissioner Holland. Any further discussion?
Mr. Chair, members of the board, just a little clarification on GIS overview. We brought that to personnel a couple weeks ago, went to personnel committee, went back to the board for adoption of the realignment. GIS overview on the workshop was more what GIS does, how it benefits the county, what projects they work on, and kind of give the whole county board up to date on what GIS is, how it works for the county, more so than an organizational layout. It's more of a functional layout and overview is what we're looking for that day.
And to that point, I mean, I think you can still put the org
We can
charts.
do it.
You can show the org, I mean, they're already adopted, that was already done.
Yep.
But if they want to understand what
Yep.
that department is, who's in that, or.
Yep, I
what
just
that
wanted to
department
clarify
makeup.
the goal of the overview was more functionality than an organization, but we'll get the organizational chart in there so everybody can see how it lays in the organization.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
All right, very good. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. We are now at the part of the meeting where we try to designate to board members when they have their advisory committee minutes. Generally 2 minutes, we try to keep it to that, to update the fellow board members of what's going on in their advisory committees. Now, nobody's had any yet, so I don't know if you've had any over the Christmas break. I know I didn't. I'm assuming Administrator Kelly doesn't have a whole lot of notes to add at this point.
No, sir.
Commissioner Catchmark, did you have anything?
Well, I'll just welcome the new commissioners and say that looks like Santa Claus brought Wright County 3 new commissioners for 2023. So welcome. And you know we can always ask. Administration's been good in getting you up to speed, and Commissioner Vetch with procedure type things, we can help out.
Thank you, and thank you for kind of motivating the orientation and preparing us a little bit better that we came forward today a little more prepared.
Sure.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I have a committee meeting with the legislators for the I-94 on Friday morning. There's also another meeting with the transportation a little bit later in that day, and a township this Thursday.
The township.
Yep, so I plan on jumping in right away.
Yeah, you have quite a busy week already with the items on yours, so. Well, look forward to any other comments before we adjourn here today? No?
Just happy to be here.
Welcome aboard. Let the fun begin.
Thank you.
And we'll adjourn today at 10:35.